I've spent a lot of time with major companies where I'm considered some kind of innovation expert, whatever that means. Like, is that an oxymoron? I don't know. Is that a contradiction in terms? Can you be an innovation expert? I don't know. But anyway, I get the phone call now from companies who want to know, why should my big company innovate? And I always tell them the same thing. It's because your company will die otherwise. And they get so offended. Like, we are a 100-year-old company with, we're the leader in our mind. I'm like, hey, listen, you called me. I'm just telling you what I think. And then I try to tell them stories about, a kid with a credit card, with $1,000 budget. I just saw him build a product that from the consumer's point of view is indistinguishable from your highly polished, multi-year generation, established product. And their first reaction is always the same. Well, we'll just buy that kid if his product is successful. And I'm like, you're not understanding the moral of the story. It's not that this one kid with a credit card can do this. Anyone with a credit card can rent the means of production and compete with you on a first-class basis in their market. And so you're not dealing with one potential competitor, but with thousands or millions. Are you really geared up for innovation at that pace? And that's usually when they hang up the phone and say, we're going to call a different expert to tell us what posters to put on the wall. We're looking for easy answers, not that kind of stuff. But I think that is what is so exciting about technology today. It's that, it's like putting Karl Marx on his head. Anybody can rent the means of production, which means entrepreneurship is becoming truly democratized, which means nobody is safe. Most modern companies employ a management toolkit that's just about 100 years old. It's based primarily in planning and forecasting. It's about holding managers accountable to, did they execute the plan the way that they said they were going to execute the plan? And that presupposes that we're able to make accurate forecasts. Here's the problem. Where do accurate forecasts come from in the first place? They come from extrapolating from a long and stable operating history. So as long as you have a long and stable operating history and the future is going to be pretty much like the past, you can make accurate forecasts and therefore you can hold people accountable for hitting the forecast. But who really feels like the world is getting more and more stable every day? So what I try to do is teach companies, no matter how large, that it starts with accountability. We need to create a new system of accountability for holding entrepreneurial managers accountable to a different set of metrics than the traditional accounting metrics. We call that innovation accounting, which is a whole mathematical system for looking at leading indicators of change rather than trailing indicators like ROI or gross revenue. Innovation accounting says, let's find out right now today what those numbers really are in real life by doing what we call minimum viable product, or MVP. Let's run an experiment. And the key to innovation accounting is we have to celebrate figuring out where we are today as the accomplishment of a milestone, even if it's bad news. But at least it's bad news that's true, like way better than good news that we just made up. So anyway, you proceed from there in innovation accounting to then incrementally show that experiment by experiment, you can drive those input numbers, those leap of faith assumptions, towards the ideal in the business plan. I think what's happening in government today is actually very exciting. I mean, people look at the political dysfunction that makes it into the cable news programs, and you're like, oh God, we got problems. And listen, we got problems, no doubt. But behind the scenes, off the radar, not where people are willing to put the cameras, are really small but I think very hopeful signs that we are stumbling our way to a whole new form of governance that is much more about the government as a creator of platforms that allow citizens to solve their own problems. To me, one of the most precious commodities that government is hoarding at the moment is data. And we have an opportunity to turn that data into useful solutions if we're willing to open it up and allow citizens who ultimately paid for the collection of that data to have access to it. So this is not about revealing people's private secrets. Rather, it's about taking the data that's already being lawfully and legally collected and making programmatic access to that information available to everybody. And when you do that, you see incredible innovation start to open up, because I think what we are on the verge of is what I call a pro-entrepreneurship public policy. To be pro-entrepreneurship as a matter of public policy means to make government a tool for helping entrepreneurs get started. That's what we want. Startups are experiments. So just like in a science lab, the more experiments you run, the more likely you are to create something great. So you got to ask yourself, what's going to make it more likely for someone to start a startup in the first place? Open data is one such thing. If you give people access to the tools of the information about what's happening in the world, you give them the opportunity to stumble on more novel solutions.